Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a really pivotal moment in history, a period of just immense upheaval that, well, it continues to shape our world.
Yeah.
We're talking about the era leading up to and encompassing the Protestant Reformation.
Right.
Our mission today is to sift through a stack of intriguing sources, pulling out the most important insights. And we've got a special focus on Rastros de Oculto,
Ah, yes.
which is, it's a unique book, offers a truly unexpected lens on these transformative events, suggesting layers of influence, beneath the conventional historical narratives.
What's truly captivating here, I think, is that we're not just dissecting a historical timeline. It's more than dates and names.
Exactly.
We're delving into the underlying currents, the societal anxieties, the spiritual fervor, and yes, even the occult dimensions that, according to this source, profoundly shape this period of monumental change.
Yeah.
It prompts us to consider a fundamental question, really. What forces, both seen and unseen, truly drive such seismic shifts in human belief? Are in the very institutions that govern our lives.
That's precisely it. And for you, listening in, we're aiming to ensure you walk away not just, well-informed about the Reformation, but also with a fresh, maybe even provocative perspective on how different narratives explain why things happen.
Different ways of seeing it.
Exactly. Today, we're not just recounting history, we're diving into a narrative that radically reinterprets the why behind these pivotal moments, revealing connections you might never have considered. So to truly grasp the, let's say, the fertile ground upon which the Reformation took root, we first need to rewind a bit.
Yeah.
Stretch back through millennia.
Go way back.
Yeah, way back. Our source, right at the start, poses this compelling question. Throughout recorded history, humanity has wrestled with the concept of evil.
Always been there.
In ancient times, with vivid imaginations and limited scientific understanding, people desperately needed explanations for malevolence, for plagues, for natural disasters, for just plain suffering.
Why bad things happen. The fundamental question.
But here's the kicker. Even now, in our hyper-connected, tech-driven third millennium, does the concept of the diablo, the devil, still hold a significant place in our collective understanding?
Yeah.
Or has it been sort of relegated to, as some might argue, something for people with nothing better to do?
It's a fascinating point. Has it just become metaphor? Or does it retain some literal force for people?
It forces us to confront how profoundly our perceptions of good and evil have, or maybe haven't, evolved.
And this brings us directly to the terminology,
Right.
The word occulto. It stems from the Latin occultus, meaning hidden, secret, or obscure.
Hidden, okay.
Precisely. It refers to phenomena that escape our ordinary senses, things beyond immediate empirical observation. And synonymously, you have esoterico.
Esoteric, yeah.
Which describes doctrines or knowledge intended only for a select few, hidden from the general public, revealed only to initiates. This was incredibly common in ancient cultures, where knowledge was power, often guarded closely.
Makes sense.
Our source, citing a dictionary of religions and occultism, defines occultism as extending beyond empirical knowledge, venturing into the supernatural. It involves secret theories, practices, rituals, all designed to invoke unknown forces.
So these forces, are they seen as like mental energies or actual external powers?
Well, the definition covers both, really, whether they're perceived as mental entities or natural, unseen powers operating in the universe.
And this isn't just some, archaic witchcraft thing from the medieval period, is it? I mean, the source seems pretty clear on that.
Not at all. The source makes it clear that practices like alchemy, astrology, Kabbalah, various forms of witchcraft. These are among the most ancient forms of occultism.
Right, so used for all sorts of things. Healing, predicting the future.
Exactly. Everything from attempting to heal illnesses and seeking prosperity to divining the future. What unites them, fundamentally, is the presupposition. The existence of spirits and occultist forces, hidden forces that govern the universe.
Shady forces. Okay.
And it's crucial to understand, occultism isn't a single unified religious system. It's more like a mosaic.
A patchwork.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Its teachings are extracted and embedded within countless groups and sects, sometimes explicitly, sometimes subtly. It forms this persistent, almost underground thread throughout human belief systems, across ages and cultures. And this universal human need to personify evil, to give it a face or a name. It manifests itself differently across cultures, but its presence is strikingly consistent.
Yeah, the devil has many names.
A myriad of names. Ancient Hebrews referred to him as Asmodio, Beelzebub, Azazel, Belial, or Baal. Muslims know him as Iblis.
Uh-huh.
The ancient Zoroastrians in Persia, he was Ahriman, the adversary of light. Egyptians had Seth, the god of chaos and violence.
Right, and the source even brings in Brazilian examples.
It does, quite vividly. It mentions popular Brazilian terms, reflecting local folklore, maybe even a touch of wry humor. Names like Rabudo, meaning the one with the big tail, or Quinoso, suggesting a mischievous or tricky spirit, or Pai da Mentira, the father of lies.
So these aren't just abstract concepts, they're culturally embedded.
Deeply. They're cultural reflections of how evil is understood, contextualized, and even, at times, sort of domesticated in everyday language. Our source contends quite strongly that no human society has ever managed to live without personifying evil. It highlights a profound, perhaps inherent, psychological and spiritual need.
What's truly captivating, though, is how, according to the source, the devil's perceived form evolves into modern times. It's not just the grotesque goat-like figures anymore.
Exactly. We move beyond those appearances that terrified our ancestors. In contemporary society, the source suggests the devil becomes far more subtle, more artiloso, more cunning, more artful.
Cunning, okay. How so?
Well, his seduction shifts from overt acts of terror to a quieter persuasion. The idea that true happiness lies in satisfying every carnal desire and the relentless pursuit of power, money, luxury.
The materialism angle.
Right. The philosophy subtly promoted is that life is meant to be lived without restrictions, a relentless pursuit of individual gratification. And what's particularly striking, according to the source, is you don't even need to directly serve this modern devil to embrace that philosophy as a way of life.
So just living that way is seen as demonic.
The Catholic Church, the source notes, identifies this very type of action, distancing humanity from God's designs through materialism and self-indulgence, as inherently demonic, attributing it to the bicho or the beast. The Vatican, in fact, urges the faithful to consider the devil as the entire cause of evil.
Wow, that's a profound shift. From a physically scary figure to an influencer of values.
It speaks volumes about how the concept of evil adapts to the times, doesn't it? The source also highlights how deeply ingrained this social and religious mixing or syncretism is, how it shapes our understanding.
Syncretism, right, the blending.
Think of the intense historical process of Brazil's colonization. A massive miscegenation, a blending of African, Portuguese, indigenous, Italian, Germanic, Oriental, and other cultures.
A real melting pot.
Absolutely.
Huh?
And it wasn't just a blending of peoples. It was a profound confluence of beliefs, traditions, worldviews, all contributing to the way people live and think there. It created this incredibly rich, yet complex spiritual tapestry.
And unlike ancient times where maybe you were forced to convert.
Exactly.
Right.
Unlike ancient times where conquered peoples were often forced to abandon their beliefs, modern society generally permits freedom of worship. This leads to a complex coexistence where, Catholics might live next to Spiritists, who are neighbors to Protestants who tolerate Hare Krishnas.
So this constant mixing is key to understanding how ideas about good and evil evolve and get reinterpreted.
That's foundational. Concepts aren't static. They're shared. They evolve. They get reinterpreted across diverse communities living side by side.
Okay, so if we pull back and look at the big picture, what does this all mean for the concept of evil itself? The source suggests it's partly psychological, like a transferencia.
Yes, a transfer of blame, essentially. It's described as a mechanism where we unconsciously unload the evil we perceive within ourselves onto an external myth, an absolute maleficent being.
So we offload our own darkness onto the double figure.
It helps us exercise our own negative essence, the source suggests. Because, let's be honest, we often find it profoundly difficult to acknowledge that badness, hatred, anger, fear, our own mundane passions, that these are inherent parts of our own being.
Yeah, it's easier to blame something outside.
The devil, in this sense, becomes a convenient receptacle for everything we consider bad or opposed to God, who is seen as the epitome of goodness, benevolence, compassion, kindness. Historically and psychologically, a figure of evil thus becomes, maybe, a necessary piece of life, a culturally sanctioned place to deposit our hate, fear, and those uncomfortable passions we'd rather not claim as our own. And bringing this into a wider context, the source discusses mythology's crucial role in constructing these enduring narratives of good and evil.
Mythology, right. Not just stories, but shapers of belief.
Exactly. Some myths, like the Iliad and Odyssey, are presented as historical events embellished poetically. The core facts might have happened, but the storytelling was imbued with lightness and smoothness.
Okay, historical kernels.
Others are purely allegorical, designed to convey moral, religious, or philosophical truths. Think of Jesus' parable stories meant to illuminate deeper meanings.
Like teaching tools.
Precisely. And still others are physical, personifying natural forces, air, earth, fire, water as deities, gods of harvest, the sun, fertility, rain, you name it.
Right, explaining the natural world through gods.
But what's particularly insightful here is that in many ancient beliefs, like those of the early Greeks, both good and evil often resided within the same deity.
So not strictly good guys and bad guys.
Not always. Think of Zeus capable of both justice and, well, extreme capriciousness. This reflects a more complex, less dualistic understanding of the divine, often manifesting in unpredictable ways that demanded rituals to appease or satisfy them. It's a far cry from the stark, separate figures of ultimate good and evil that would emerge later.
But then we see a crucial shift, right? A real turning point in this understanding of evil. The source points to Persia, around 660 BCE.
Yes, with the prophet Zoroaster. He fundamentally replaced the natural polytheism of Persia with a pragmatic monotheism, a system that dominated Western Asia from Cyrus the Great until Alexander the Great's conquest.
Okay, so what was the big change?
Here, for perhaps the first time, we get what the source calls a true representation of the devil as a separate, distinct entity. Zoroaster taught the existence of a supreme being, Ahura Mazda, the source of all good.
The good guy.
Right. But he also spoke of Ahriman, who rebelled and became the Prince of Darkness, the author of all evil on earth.
The adversary.
Exactly. This established an incessant cosmic war between good and evil, a belief that would profoundly influence the exiled Jews in Babylon and other regions who were under significant Zoroastrian influence at the time.
Wow. So that clear good versus evil battle has surprisingly ancient roots in Persia.
It really seems so, according to this perspective. And this progression towards a more explicit personification of evil. You see it vividly in other ancient traditions, too. It makes you wonder about the evolution of how we picture evil.
Like the Norse myths, the source mentions Loki.
Yes, the Norse sagas present a distinct figure of malevolence in Loki. He's described as the calumniator of gods and the articulator of all frauds and condemnable acts.
Not a nice guy, then, even if sometimes charming.
Right, often depicted as beautiful and well-built, but possessed a truly capricious temperament and deeply bad instincts. He famously fathered terrifying monsters: the wolf Fenris, the serpent Nidgard, and Hela, the goddess of death.
Yikes.
The Norse gods knew these offspring would cause immense harm. Odin, the head honcho, took action, casting Nidgard into the ocean where it grew so large it eventually encircled the earth, biting its own tail. He threw Hela into Niflheim, giving her power over the dead in 9 realms.
And Loki himself.
Eventually punished, chained with a serpent dripping venom onto his face, causing earthquakes when he writhed. These myths, even if poetic, suggest a clear progression towards making evil a tangible, powerful adversary, distinct from the forces of good, really setting the stage for later religious interpretations.
Okay, so we've traced this idea of evil through ancient myths, Norse or Zoroastrian, and let's fast forward through centuries of really profound change. The next pivotal chapter, crucial for understanding the Reformation, unfolds with the monumental collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE.
A huge turning point.
Huge. It didn't just redraw political maps, it dramatically reshaped the spiritual landscape across Europe. This ushered in what historians often call the Middle Ages.
Sometimes called the Dark Ages, though that's debated.
Right. Often painted, maybe too broadly, as an era of obscurantism, superstition, and ignorance. Yet it was in this very crucible that Christianity not only survived, but became a major heir to Roman tradition. It spread across Europe, becoming the central organizing force amidst the disorganization following the Germanic invasions.
So despite the negative labels sometimes attached, this period was absolutely critical for shaping Western religion and society.
Absolutely. Laid the groundwork for everything that followed, really.
And in the grand scheme of things, what does this tell us? The Christianity that spread during the ambitious missions of this medieval period? The source notes it was contaminated and very different from its earliest forms in the first century.
Contaminated? How so?
Well, the church constantly wrestled for independence against persistent imperial interference. Secular powers often tried to meddle in spiritual affairs. By 1000 CE, Christianity had spread like wildfire across Europe, reaching even Russia.
And then later to the Americas.
Yes, eventually arriving in the Americas, notably through the Jesuits. The missionary work was conducted similarly, spreading Catholicism throughout much of the Southern Hemisphere. But the point is, it carried with it these evolving, or as the source suggests, contaminated forms of faith. It had absorbed elements, practices, political influences that differed significantly from its original, perhaps purer forms.
So a complex, maybe compromised religious identity had developed over centuries.
Exactly. An ongoing absorption of local customs and political realities.
And this nuanced historical context is absolutely crucial, you see, because it profoundly sets the stage for the deep-seated issues that would eventually just boil over into the Reformation.
All these factors building up.
Yeah, the prevailing spiritual climate, the widespread societal anxieties, and the institutional practices of the medieval church, influenced by these centuries of contamination and entanglement with secular power, they created incredibly fertile ground for radical change.
People were searching for something more.
Definitely. People were genuinely searching for something more authentic, a clearer path to salvation. And the established church, for all its immense power and reach, was increasingly failing to provide it. The tension was palpable, wasn't it? A simmering discontent just waiting for a spark. Okay, so with that stage dramatically set centuries of evolving beliefs, a Christianity described as contaminated. Let's turn our attention to the immediate prelude to the Reformation itself.
The calm before the storm, perhaps.
Or maybe not so calm. Our source makes it strikingly clear. The Catholic Church in the 16th century was profoundly unprepared to genuinely attend to the new spiritual needs and anxieties of its faithful.
Unprepared. That's a strong word.
It is. People were not only hungry for clear explanations for their suffering, their existence, but they were also terrified. Terrified of divine vengeance, of death, of the specter of hell. Yet they found little genuine solace or spiritual nourishment from the very institutions supposed to provide it.
A real disconnect.
A profound disconnect between institution and individual, this widespread spiritual desperation. It was truly a ticking time bomb.
And in the grand scheme of things, what does this tell us? The church, rather than offering a beacon of spiritual difference or a true alternative to worldly concerns, it regrettably mirrored the very social inequalities prevalent in society.
How so?
The alto clero, the popes, cardinals, archbishops, bishops, they almost exclusively came from the nobility. Their appointments were often based on aristocratic lineage, political favors, wealth, rather than genuine spiritual calling or theological depth.
Right, power structures reflected in the church.
Precisely. On the other hand, the basso clero, primarily the parish priests, the ones actually interacting with the faithful day-to-day, were drawn from the lower classes, often uncultured, sometimes even illiterate.
So not exactly a spiritual hierarchy based on merit.
Not really. It was, in essence, a direct reflection of earthly power structures and pervasive social divides. And this deeply undermined its moral authority and spiritual credibility in the eyes of the common people.
And the rot, it seems, started right at the very top, didn't it? Festering downwards. Popes like Alexander VI, Julius II, Leo X.
Infamous names, some of them.
Yeah, vividly described by historians and noted in our source as being deeply negligent in their religious duties, far more concerned with worldly affairs.
Patrons of the Renaissance, yeah.
Grand patrons, commissioning magnificent art, architecture, but at what immense spiritual cost to the flock. And the bishops, too, set no better example.
Often chosen from powerful noble families.
Frequently. Appointments were often just payment for favors or part of complex political deals between kings and popes. These absentee bishops, they were primarily interested in the huge salaries and prestige their positions brought.
Not the spiritual well-being of their dioceses.
Rarely resided there, and crucially, they didn't provide the necessary guidance, training, or oversight to their priests, leaving congregations adrift, spiritually starved. The corruption was systemic, wasn't it?
It certainly seems that way from the descriptions, which begs the question, what did this mean for the everyday faithful, the person in the pew?
Yeah.
With these absentee bishops, parish priests lacked proper guidance, theological training. These priests themselves, often chosen locally, were generally uncultured and, as the source states, understood as much as their faithful about the very liturgy they were meant to preach and explain.
Imagine that, your spiritual leader struggling to explain the basics.
It's hard to fathom. The spiritual hunger among the people was immense, this pervasive gnawing fear of death, the devil, hell, even just the uncertainties of life itself gripped them. Yet the church, due to these systemic failures and profound spiritual neglect, offered little genuine nourishment or clear answers.
Created a void.
A deep void. And desperate people will naturally try to fill that void elsewhere, often with superstition or just longing for anything more meaningful.
Then there's the pervasive language barrier, a truly alienating factor that just compounded the spiritual crisis.
Ah, yes, Latin.
Masses, the central act of worship, were conducted entirely in Latin. a language that, as our source pointedly emphasizes, nobody understood anymore.
Imagine that experience, week after week.
Desperately seeking spiritual comfort, participating in the most sacred rites, and having the words spoken be completely unintelligible. An echo in a foreign tongue. It created this enormous, unbridgeable distance between the faithful and the very core of their worship.
Turn it into a performance rather than a connection.
Exactly, a ritualistic performance. It's no wonder then, as our source so aptly concludes, that it was natural for people to seek alternative forms of religiosity. The stage was perfectly set, wasn't it? For someone brave, bold enough to offer a different path, a more accessible, profoundly personal path to God. So, with the Catholic Church in this profound state of crisis, spiritually unprepared, riddled with corruption, alienated from its own faithful seat, the stage was absolutely set for a monumental, world-changing shift.
The breaking point.
And it was Martin Luther, an Augustinian friar, professor of theology, who in the 16th century truly challenged the Pope and ignited what we now know as the Protestant Reformation.
Luther, the spark.
His actions, spurred by deeply felt theological convictions and the observable failures of the Church, sent shockwaves across Europe, forever changing its religious, political, social landscape.
And Luther's journey, it began with his own intense spiritual struggles, didn't it? A profound dissatisfaction with the Church's teachings on salvation.
Yeah, how can a sinful human be right with God? That was his big question.
Exactly. He grappled with that constantly. His breakthrough came from studying the Apostle Paul's writings, leading him to the revolutionary understanding that salvation is achieved not through good works or indulgences or the mediation of priests, but through faith alone.
Sola fide, faith alone.
Sola fide, a direct challenge to centuries of Catholic doctrine emphasizing sacraments and good deeds. And his second pillar was sola scriptura.
Scripture alone, the Bible as the sole authority.
Precisely. Christian doctrine should be based on the Bible alone, not on church tradition or papal decrees. This empowered individuals to read and interpret Scripture for themselves, a truly radical idea at the time.
And these theological insights fueled his most famous act, posting his 95 Theses on the church door in Wittenberg in 1517.
The spark hits the powder keg.
Right. While the academic debate he intended was common, the specific target, the sale of indulgences, was explosive.
Indulgences, paying for reduced time in purgatory, essentially.
Yeah, certificates often sold to finance church projects like rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica. Luther saw it as a scandalous corruption, exploiting people's fears, undermining genuine repentance.
More than just a critique.
Oh, it was a thunderclap, questioning papal authority, sparking a continent-wide debate, and the printing press, that played a huge role in it.
Absolutely crucial. A relatively new technology then. Luther's ideas, translated from academic Latin into German, could be mass-produced, disseminated widely, rapidly, reaching an unprecedented number of people.
Turn an academic dispute into a popular movement, just like that.
Almost overnight, in historical terms. And from Luther's initial challenge, the movement quickly branched out. It wasn't monolithic. It showed the diverse theological and social concerns bubbling up at the time.
So Lutherans were one major branch.
Right, emphasizing justification by faith, the importance of Scripture. But other reformers emerged with their own distinct interpretations. John Calvin, for example.
Calvinism, big influence.
Hugely influential. Developed a rigorously logical theological system. Yeah. Calvin emphasized the absolute sovereignty of God and the concept of predestination.
Predestination, the idea that God's already chosen who's saved and who isn't.
Yes, regardless of their actions. He established a kind of holy commonwealth in Geneva, Switzerland. Strict moral codes, religious discipline enforced, aiming to create a truly God-fearing society.
And Calvinism spread.
Rapidly. Influenced reform movements in France, the Huguenot Scotland with the Presbyterians, England, the Puritans, gave rise to a highly disciplined, intellectually robust form of Protestantism.
But the Reformation didn't stop there. Our source highlights another fascinating and often persecuted group, the Anabaptists.
Ah, the radicals, some call them.
They believed Luther and Calvin hadn't gone far enough, right? Felt their views were still too Catholic.
Exactly. Especially concerning infant baptism and the nature of the sacraments. What's truly interesting is their desire was for an even more radical break, an uncompromising return to what they saw as earlier, purer forms of Christian practice.
So not just tweaking doctrines, but rebuilding from the ground up.
Pretty much, reestablishing what they believed was true Christianity as found in the New Testament. Which raises an important question. What were the Anabaptists truly aiming for? Our source details how an ardent disciple of Huldrych Zwingli, another Swiss reformer, actually rebaptized adults who'd been baptized as children.
Rebaptism. Anabaptizo, that's where the name comes from.
That's it. And beyond that, they advocated for radical separation of church and state, pacifism, refusing to bear arms, and communal sharing of goods, often forming these self-sufficient communities.
A whole different way of living, then.
Very different. The source suggests that in their fervent pursuit of reestablishing true Christianity, the Anabaptists, despite differing from Luther and Calvin on what some might see as minor issues, actually completed the Reformation in spirit, pushing the reformational impulse to its logical, often revolutionary conclusion.
Not just about individual faith, but a transformed community.
Exactly, which sometimes led to movements like the Munster Rebellion, where some Anabaptists tried to edify the kingdom of God on earth through radical social and political reform, which ultimately was met with fierce opposition and violent suppression from both Catholic and other Protestant authorities.
So these diverse movements, Lutherans, Calvinists, Anabaptists, they represented this profound breaking away from centuries of Catholic dominance.
A fragmentation, but also a new vitality in some ways.
Each driven by this fervent desire for a more authentic, accessible, biblically rooted faith, directly responding to the deep failures of the medieval church we talked about.
All seeking, in their own ways, to rebuild or restore Christianity to what they believed was its original uncorrupted form.
Creating this fragmented but incredibly vibrant new spiritual landscape across Europe. This era wasn't just about religious doctrine, was it? It was about power, identity, the very structure of society.
Absolutely intertwined.
Okay, now, let's step back into the truly unique perspective of our source material. Rastros do Oculto. Because it suggests something deeper is going on beneath all this history.
Yes, beneath the theological debates, the political power plays.
There's a deeper, unseen spiritual struggle at play, almost like a cosmic chess game. The book posits that spiritual entities, specifically the Irmandade, the Brotherhood, led by Satan himself, possess this profound secret knowledge. They call it the Chave de Tempo.
The key of time.
A key of time. It suggests this isn't just about human will or historical forces. It's about a sophisticated ancient strategy unfolding across millennia.
And bringing this into wider context, this key of time, according to the source, grants the Brotherhood a unique ability, the ability to predict the birth of Salados.
Salados. Sealed ones.
Sealed ones. Individuals chosen by God for specific, pivotal purposes throughout history. The source gives examples like Noah, Abraham, Moses, John the Baptist, Jesus, figures whose arrival profoundly altered human history.
Okay, so while we might not see a pattern in when they appear.
Exactly. While we, with our human minds, might perceive no natural logic in the timing or sequence of these births, the Brotherhood, with their hidden knowledge, perceives a decipherable cycle. An ordem de tempo is spiritual.
A spiritual time order, like they've cracked a code.
Something like that. It suggests a highly sophisticated, almost scientific understanding of spiritual patterns that to us appears as an undecipherable cadence. And that Satan, the source claims, can then reveal this spiritual time order to his followers, empowering them with a form of ancient foresight.
So how? How exactly do they do this? The Brotherhood, according to the source, employs 3 determinate factors to identify these Salados. Factors that go way beyond what we might normally observe.
Right, it gets quite specific.
First, they utilize astrological and astronomical signs. They believe rare celestial phenomena, precise planetary alignments, significant eclipses, things like that.
Not just any old comet.
No, always rare, highly significant events. They believe these aren't random cosmic occurrences. Instead, these events precisely pinpoint regions, cities, even specific neighborhoods where a sealed one is likely to be born.
Geographic precision from the stars.
Exactly. The source notes that a celestial phenomenon isn't seen globally, allowing for incredibly precise geographical predictions. It even mentions Mark Kidger's theory of the various stars of Bethlehem.
Ah, the Magi connection.
Right. This theory posits a sequence of celestial events, not just one star. A triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in 7 BCE, then Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars grouping in 6 BCE, both in Pisces, which was culturally linked to Judah, then Jupiter and the Moon in 5 BCE, followed by a supernova.
A whole series of signs.
Yeah. And according to the source, these phenomena allowed the Magi of Babylon and Persia, steeped in astrology, to interpret the signs and locate Jesus' birth despite the humble circumstances. For them, what was written in the heavens was overwhelmingly significant. a celestial roadmap to divine intention.
Okay, so astrology is the first factor. What's the second?
Secondly, they employ numerology and Kabbalistic formulas. This is where the intricacies of the Brotherhood's knowledge become truly profound and, well, esoteric.
Numerology, using numbers to predict things.
But apparently in a very advanced way. The source claims they use advanced numerological tables to determine birth timings. And specifically for the Salados, these calculations surprisingly correlate with the numbers 5 or 9.
5 or 9? Why those numbers?
Well, that's intriguing because the source explains these numbers are highly significant in high magic and Satanism.
Ah, okay. So not typically godly numbers like 3 or 7.
Right. Think of it like a highly encrypted code. While numbers like 3 and 7 might represent God's divine nature in a conventional Christian context, the Brotherhood, through their specific Kabbalistic formulas, claims to have a master key that can reread these divine codes.
They can reinterpret God's numbers through their own system.
That's the claim, transforming them into their own significant numbers, 5 and 9. It's not that God uses 5 and 9, but rather that Satan's sophisticated system allows him to decode God's spiritual intentions through a different inverted lens, almost like they've found a way to decipher a perfectly encrypted message and turn it to their own advantage. Okay, astrology, numerology. Well, what's the third factor? This one sounds unsettling.
Yes. The third factor, according to Rastros do Oculto, is genetic alterations.
Genetic alterations? How?
The source boldly states that fallen angels can actually genetically alter germline cells during relations with humans.
Wow.
And it claims this isn't random. Satan, with his supposedly superior knowledge of human genetics, gained over millennia of observation and manipulation, uses his understanding to induce desired mutations.
To what end? Not just giants, like in some old stories.
The ultimate goal, the book claims, isn't merely physical giants. It's to create humans capable of complete demonic channeling. Essentially, a perfect host for high-ranking demons.
A vessel.
Exactly. A normal human body, the source explains, couldn't withstand such complete, unmitigated channeling without dying or being utterly destroyed. This is envisioned as a long, carefully cultivated lineage, a kind of dark spiritual engineering across generations, culminating eventually in the Antichrist, mirroring, in a dark way, how God chose a specific lineage for the Messiah.
That is a truly chilling and radical proposition.
It absolutely is. Which brings us back to that question about the numbers 5 and 9. It raises an important point about the very nature of spiritual influence, according to this source. Why would numbers associated with Satanism be tied to God's Salados?
Yeah, it seems contradictory.
The source explains it this way. While numbers like 3 and 7 might typically represent God's nature, their specific Kabbalistic formulas, through different angles and extreme complexity, can transform these fundamental numbers into 5 and 9. It implies this perfectly structured system of calculations allows the Brotherhood to identify potential targets, even those chosen by God, with high accuracy.
So once they identify them, what's the goal?
Their goal, then, is to try and alter their polarity.
Alter their polarity, like flipping a switch.
The source uses an analogy from orthomolecular medicine. Oxygen is essential for life, right? But when its polarity is altered, it becomes a radical livre, a free radical that destroys cells and causes aging. Spiritually, Satanists, according to this book, believe they can similarly alter the spiritual polarity of a sealed one, turning a potential blessing into a tool of damnation.
A spiritual inversion, taking something meant for good and twisting it.
Precisely. Transforming something divinely intended for good into something destructive.
And this is where the concept of predestinados versus elitos comes in, sealed versus called.
Exactly. It adds another profound layer to this spiritual conflict described in the source. It suggests God predestines only a select few, the Salados, but calls many the elitos or chamados.
So some are locked in, others have a choice.
That seems to be the idea. In the New Testament, for instance, the Brotherhood, according to the source, considers only John the Baptist and Jesus as Salados. However, many other pivotal figures, like the apostles, were chamados, meaning they were called to a purpose, but in this condition, they still possess free will to choose to follow Jesus or not.
Okay. And the Brotherhood thinks they can interfere with this.
Yes. Armed with their key of time and its ability to alter polarity, they believe they can cancel God's choice, turn a potential blessing into damnation. They claim to have done this with Judas Iscariot, for example, believing they altered his polarity, transforming him into an instrument of hell.
Wow. And Judas isn't the only example given.
Not at all. The source lists many others who allegedly lost their blessing or did not fulfill their calling. The first generation of Israelites who left Egypt, Nadab and Abihu, even Moses, who could have entered the promised land but failed King Saul, many Old Testament prophets who supposedly prophesied by their own soul, even most of Jesus' brothers.
So it paints this picture where even God's chosen are constantly vulnerable.
Constantly vulnerable to spiritual manipulation and the insidious influence of the brotherhood. A really chilling perspective on spiritual warfare. This interpretation, therefore, frames the entirety of human history, including major religious movements like the Reformation, as an ongoing, relentless spiritual battle.
Everything's seen through that lens.
Everything. The source emphasizes that God's intention is not to reveal the seal prematurely. He actively hides his chosen ones until their kairos.
Kairos, the opportune moment.
The opportune, divinely appointed moment. If discovered earlier by the enemy, that individual might be used to cause humiliation, isolation, sadness, pain, and persecution, like John the Baptist, hidden in the desert for years.
But there's a paradox here.
Yes, here lies a divine paradox according to the source. God can transform these very adversities, these trials and tribulations, into strength and purification, preparing them for their ultimate mission. It's like that analogy of the radicale leaf, the free radicals again, where the same forces that enable life can also cause aging. It implies a delicate, constant balance of spiritual forces where even opposition can be part of a larger divine plan.
So this complex, almost unseen spiritual engineering involving celestial signs, intricate numerology, even genetic manipulation is, according to this perspective, at play throughout history.
Underlying everything.
Influencing who rises, who falls, how major events like the Reformation unfold, all within this larger tapestry of good versus evil. It's a truly mind-bending way to look at historical causation, isn't it?
Absolutely. It forces you to consider that behind the human drama, there might have been an unseen, calculating intelligence at work, not just influencing, but actively targeting key individuals, orchestrating events through a hidden key of time.
This isn't just history, it's cosmic strategy played out on Earth, according to this book.
A profoundly different way of looking at it.
Okay, so we've explored the desperate need for reform, the rise of Protestantism, and this unique occult perspective framing it all as spiritual warfare. This inevitably brings us to the topic of a Counter-Reforma.
The Counter-Reformation, the Catholic response.
Exactly. Now, here's a crucial point for you listening in regarding our source material, Rastros do Oculto. While the table of contents in the full book explicitly lists a Counter-Reforma as a topic.
But the excerpts we have.
The specific excerpts provided to us for this deep dive do not contain any detailed content about the Counter-Reformation itself. However, to really understand the whole sweep of the Reformation era, you absolutely need to grasp the Catholic Church's response.
It's a massive piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. So while we'll be stepping slightly beyond our specific source for these next historical details, we want to make sure you have the complete picture.
That's a vital distinction to make. And yes, in the grand scheme of things, the Protestant challenge demanded a significant, multifaceted response from the Catholic Church. Historically, the Counter-Reformation was this concerted effort spanning roughly from the mid-16th to the mid-17th century.
A long period.
A long and intense period to revitalize the church from within, reaffirm its core doctrines, and crucially, combat the spread of Protestantism. It was a time of intense internal reform and external defense, trying to stem the tide of defections and reassert its authority over a fragmented Christendom.
And this counter movement, it manifested in several powerful ways, right? The most significant was undoubtedly the Council of Trent.
Trent, hugely important, convened intermittently between 1545 and 1563.
So not just one meeting, but several sessions over years. What were its key outcomes?
Well, doctrinally, it firmly reaffirmed traditional Catholic teachings that Luther and Calvin had challenged. Things like the importance of both faith and good works for salvation, the validity of all 7 sacraments, the existence of purgatory, the irreplaceable role of priests and papal authority.
So doubling down theologically?
Essentially, yes. But it also initiated crucial reforms in clerical discipline. Seminaries were established to properly train priests, addressing that illiteracy and lack of education we talked about earlier.
Tackling the root causes.
Exactly. The council also curbed practices like bishops being absent from their diocese and strictly forbade simony, the buying or selling of church offices. It was a clear, if maybe belated, acknowledgement of the internal corruption that had fueled the Reformation. Indeed, Trent provided the doctrinal backbone, you could say, but the practical engine of the Counter-Reformation lay in the rise of new religious orders.
Like the Jesuits.
Foremost among them, yes. The Society of Jesus, better known as the Jesuits, founded by Ignatius of Loyola in 1540, they became the intellectual and missionary vanguard of the Catholic revival.
Highly educated, disciplined.
Highly educated, rigorously disciplined, fiercely loyal to the Pope, their role was multifaceted. They established schools and universities across Europe, becoming instrumental in Catholic education, producing brilliant theologians.
And missionaries too, right?
Spearheaded an unprecedented wave of missionary work, spreading Catholicism to newly discovered lands in the Americas, Asia, Africa, often adapting their methods to local cultures, which was quite innovative. Their zeal, their intellectual rigor were crucial in winning back areas that had turned Protestant and solidifying Catholic stronghold.
And there are other orders too.
Oh, yes. Orders like the Capuchins, focusing on serving the poor, and the Ursulines, focusing on educating women, also emerged, contributing to a broader spiritual renewal.
Okay, so reform, new orders.
Yeah.
But the Counter-Reformation also used more, shall we say, coercive tools.
It did, to combat what it saw as heresy. The Roman Inquisition, an ecclesiastical court system, was strengthened and centralized, particularly in Italy and Spain,
The Inquisition, its purpose.
to identify, suppress, and punish heresy, often using severe methods, it has to be said. Alongside this came the establishment of the Index of Forbidden Books,
Banning books.
a comprehensive list of publications Catholics were prohibited from reading because they were deemed heretical, immoral, or politically dangerous. A clear attempt to control intellectual discourse and prevent the spread of Protestant ideas. Controversial, often brutal, yes, but effective in preventing Protestantism spreading further in many Catholic territories. And we really cannot overlook the profound impact of Baroque art and architecture.
The visual side of the Counter-Reformation.
Exactly. This artistic movement, flourishing from the early 17th century into the mid-18th, became a powerful propaganda tool for the Catholic Church. Unlike the more restrained Protestant art, Baroque emphasized emotion, drama, grandeur, opulent theatricality.
Think big, emotional, ornate.
Absolutely. Cathedrals adorned with soaring domes, elaborate altars, vivid frescoes, all designed to inspire awe, convey the glory of God, visually reassert the triumph and majesty of the Catholic Church.
Like Bernini or Caravaggio.
Perfect examples. Their art was deliberately intended to evoke intense spiritual experiences, draw the faithful back into the grandeur of Catholic worship. It was a sensory assault, really, designed to rekindle devotion and reinforce the Church's authority.
So even though our specific source, Rastros or Oculto, doesn't give us these historical details on the Counter-Reformation, understanding it is absolutely critical.
Essential context.
It shows the Catholic Church didn't just passively crumble. It responded with force, determination, reshaped its internal structure, redefined doctrines, vigorously defended its territory spiritually and politically.
And it's fascinating to speculate how Rastros do Oculto might have interpreted these events, isn't it?
Totally. Would the Council of Trent have been seen as just human institutional response? Or maybe influenced by the Irmandade trying to reassert a different kind of control? How would the Jesuit zeal be interpreted within that framework of spiritual engineering or the battle for Salados? The Inquisition just an earthly tool or a spiritual weapon in that hidden war?
We can only guess based on the excerpts, but it highlights the depth of that alternative narrative.
So, wrapping things up, what does this all mean for us today? We've journeyed through ancient beliefs about evil, traced the moral and spiritual decay, paving the way for the Reformation, and seen how these shifts were interpreted through this unique lens of spiritual conflict, celestial predictions, numerology, even genetic alterations.
Quite a journey.
And by integrating the historical details of the Counter-Reformation, we've gained crucial insight into the immense pressures that force this monumental reckoning within the Christian world, fundamentally reshaping its future.
This discussion, I think, really highlights the cyclical nature of human institutions and beliefs, how they constantly respond to both internal and external pressures, societal, intellectual, or, as our source provocatively suggests, spiritual.
Things are rarely simple.
Rarely. It reminds us, historical events are often interwoven with complex motivations, unseen influences operating beneath the surface of the standard narratives. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often do we truly understand the unseen forces shaping our own history, our own choices, or even the events unfolding around us right now?
Indeed. And as you, listening, reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this provocative thought. If spiritual forces, using tools like celestial signs and intricate numerology, could potentially exert such profound influence over grand historical narratives, dictating the rise and fall of movements, identifying key individuals, what hidden currents might be shaping the world around you right now, and how might understanding them or even just considering the possibility change your own perspective?
Yeah, it definitely challenges us to look beyond the obvious. Knowledge, as we've seen throughout this conversation, is most valuable when it's understood, when it's applied to our own frameworks. Consider the lessons from the past, the different perspectives offered, and that enduring quest for truth that drives humanity.
Keep digging.
There's always more to learn. And sometimes the greatest insights come from looking beyond the obvious, into the hidden, the esoteric, and questioning the accepted narrative.
Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and above all, keep an open mind. We hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about.